Hello everyone, you are on the channel Adult Children. Today we will be picking mushrooms with our parents. It is already the end of October, it rained just 5 days ago, and now it might be possible to gather something. It is morning now. The forest has already started to turn yellow, and it is impossible to eat mushrooms. When I turn on my program, I go home, set a goal, and when the coordinates are determined, I press this button. That's it. Now we can put the phone in our pocket and go mushroom picking. We will return to this point when we need to. A lot of leaves have already fallen, and here on one of the trees I found oyster mushrooms. They are beautifully placed here. You can cut them. It's already clear that you have nibbled on them a little. In principle, they can indeed be eaten. We will cut them.
There's a connection with satellites.
Our navigator is complaining about the lack of satellites, possibly because there is a forest here. The connection with satellites is established above. The mushrooms are not visible. The base is near the ground. Here, the first mushrooms are falling into the backpack. A little bit, of course, but it's nice. Today the weather is not very sunny, not cold, and on a lying tree I noticed a small batch of mushrooms. A little bit, of course, but it's just nice. Where mosquitoes often sit means it's warm, cozy, and inviting for them. Looking at the tree, perhaps there are some small ones somewhere else, or nearby, in the vicinity. Let's carefully inspect the entire tree from the bottom to the top. For now, nothing more is visible. Parents also love the forest. And here we found another batch of oyster mushrooms. Oyster mushrooms grow on the ground. There are beige and grey ones here that grew later. You can also see dried ones on the tree that have been hanging here for a long time. It's been about a month, but they can also be eaten if you look closely in the forest. You can find many more oyster mushrooms, and among them, near the roots, you can see that these oyster mushrooms are newer, fresher, and something has slightly gnawed at them. Perhaps a mouse or a pest. So mushrooms have already appeared in this forest. This mushroom is notable for its special freshness. Therefore we will carefully cut so as not to damage the mycelium. We are cutting carefully. The mycelium is very dense. They have incredibly beautifully thickened and robust stems. And that means mushrooms have already appeared in our areas. We can burn them, we need to eat a little, which means we came for a reason. Here parents found another mushroom, but it's a wooden mushroom. In its young age they say it can be eaten. It even smells a bit like mushrooms, but it's not very juicy. In spring we hung them. But we will eat them if we don't have oyster mushrooms. We won't collect such mushrooms for now. Also, there are young mushrooms that can grow in just a week with good humidity. So we won't touch them. I found such interesting mushrooms. I don't know what they are called, but it's also clear that something has been gnawing on them. They have a damp smell, not very mushroom-like. They are not visually appealing, so I won't take them for now. They might be edible. If you know what kind of mushrooms these are, please write in the comments. If you find a batch of mushrooms on one of the trees, you need to circle around that tree, about a radius of 30 meters, to ensure there are no mushrooms around. Because very often spores spread not very far, not a very large distance, so you always need to look for more oyster mushrooms nearby. Let's move a little further. Here you can see where these mushrooms have fallen. Old wooden mushrooms have crumbled, and after walking a little, we are entering a stump which also has an oyster mushroom mycelium. It's not very large, but it's nice too. We will cut them. The mushroom has a dense structure and a pleasant mushroom aroma. Well, something here is nibbling a bit. Probably mice. Slowly, the number of mushrooms is increasing. There are many promising places. And here is one of them. Nice. The stump is tall, but you can see that the mushrooms were cut very recently. The fresh cuts haven't dried out yet. You should always look at fallen trees and those that have been broken for a long time. Mycelium may have already formed on them. It is clear that the tree has fallen and mushrooms are growing on it. This is also one of the types of oyster mushrooms. You can take them, but they are not very tasty. We are looking at each stump, searching for mushrooms. Here, indeed, on one of the stumps, you can see a young mycelium. We won't touch the small ones, but these larger ones can be cut. They don't appear darker than the ones I cut last time. These are such beautiful mushrooms. According to information from the internet, oyster mushrooms are on par with porcini mushrooms in terms of phosphorus, potassium, and other beneficial substances. Therefore, this is a treasure trove of vitamins and trace elements, the most beneficial for the body. On one of the fallen trees, I found this mushroom. Of course, I don't know if it's convenient or not. If you know, please share your comments with me. Mom found some interesting mushroom. Let's see where. If it is cut or torn, there should definitely be a greenish cut on the stem. There is obviously no greenish cut here, so this is indeed something else. Last time on this tree, I cut a batch of oyster mushrooms, but new ones have hardly grown for some reason. Although below here already. It is quite clear that there were indeed old oyster mushrooms, but unfortunately they were not very nice. And there are no new ones. Very similar to oyster mushrooms, but dry and have a porous surface on the bottom. If you know what this is, please write in the comments. I walked a bit and came out to the pine forest. Very beautiful, it smells good. In such a forest, of course, it is useless to look for oyster mushrooms, but you can find various types of aspen mushrooms. I don't see any mushrooms here, possibly because this little forest is small, a section of the forest, and there's nothing to catch there. I found these mushrooms on a tree. It's a poplar. You can see a little bit of oyster mushrooms up there, but they will be hard to reach. And what kind of mushrooms are these? I don't know. Maybe you can tell me. This mushroom is so hard and interesting. I walked around the forest and found this interesting bunch of mushrooms. These are not oyster mushrooms, but they grow very beautifully, and it is clear that they have enough nutrients and moisture for growth. I also don't know what kind of mushrooms these are. They have a very beautiful stem, and a strong cap, but I won't cut them because I don't know them. We have already been here. You can see old cuts, and it is clear that a mushroom picker was here after us, a fresh cut from yesterday or today. But the upper mushroom was not picked. However, we have a stick here that we will use to remove them. The main thing is to tear it off from the base of the stem. Of course, it's better to have a special stick with a knife, but we don't have it, so we will use traditional methods to break them. There is no other way for now. It's time for lunch. Let's take a short break and have a snack. It's already 12 o'clock. We have bacon, bread, and a bunch of delicious things that can be cooked over the fire. Everyone is already hungry and has breathed in fresh air. And Mom has a special shashlik made as an assortment. Beautiful, unusual. The main thing is that the cutlet doesn't fall into the fire now. The heat is good, so we have long sticks. Yeah, and Dad has a mix of different materials to keep the fire going strong and steady. Mom, sit here comfortably. You'll do it yourself with ease and confidence. There are enough logs in the forest, plenty to gather and use. Here, it will be enough to live all winter, keeping us warm and cozy throughout the cold months. In winter and summer, after a modest lunch, we can go look for some mushrooms again. Maybe luck will smile upon us somewhere. Do you hear it? It's already burning out. Planning to rest after intense walking. Overall, the weather is pleasing so far. Let's go in that direction. You can also find good feeders for wild animals in the forest. This is how it is made. Very simple. With the help of ropes, without a single nail, there is a sign hanging. Prochania is not poszkodzувати. We won't break this setup. These oyster mushrooms need to be inspected not only underfoot but also upwards. I looked up and saw oyster mushrooms growing almost at the very top of this stump. Down here someone has already cut the oyster mushrooms, but there are still some above. So let's take a stick and start knocking them down. If you look carefully around, the nearest trees may have more oyster mushrooms hidden by branches, and not every forager will be able to see them. Quite nice mushrooms hidden from foragers. We will cut them. Considering the dry weather, oyster mushrooms should be sought in lowlands near water bodies, swamps, and close to the ground where fallen trees and branches prevent moisture from evaporating quickly. I found some among the branches. The cherries are quite pretty, fresh, and have a pleasant smell. Such ones can be brought to the housewife with pleasure. In the forest, there are picturesque clearings where one can also search for mushrooms that love open spaces. It is evident that it has dried up a bit here, but there are no mushrooms yet. Recently, I saw a duck that flew out literally from under my feet. So, we still have some game. A boar was foraging here, clearly digging for roots. Here are indeed the hoof prints, quite large, and also from the nose as well. Here I have come across a fallen tree. When searching for oyster mushrooms, It is advisable to choose places where less sunlight falls, because these areas have more moisture, providing mushrooms with more moisture to grow. I walk through the snow and see a bunch of oyster mushrooms that have covered a fallen tree. Here are some old oyster mushrooms, and young ones have grown that no one has picked yet. We will carefully and meticulously knit some beautiful and aesthetically pleasing, not very large, but intricately designed teeth, ensuring each one is crafted with precision and attention to detail. We take it closer to the tree. A mobile phone fell out. I need to pick it up. And here is such a nice bush of mushrooms. There is some swamp ahead, and there might be oyster mushrooms around here, because it is very important. Here is a fallen and decaying tree, and I see that indeed oyster mushrooms have started to grow here, which are tightly clustered. It's the trunk. Because there is a lot of moisture here, and my theory is confirmed on where to look for mushrooms in dry weather, we will cut. They are not very big yet, but still nice. For the quantity, it's quite acceptable. It got late in the evening, and we will start getting ready to go home. Everyone is tired, but we had a lot of fun. Using the boost of health, it's time to go home. Now let's see what we found. This is indeed a mushroom paradise. It's a bit worn out here. And even some mushrooms were found here for Mom. She will soak them for a long time, but later she will probably preserve them. So our mushroom fishing was not in vain. Please like, leave remarks and comments. Stay with us. Goodbye everyone.